tracking reports about a new memo from the Office of Management and Budget about whether those federal employees that are currently furloughed will get back pay after the government shutdown ends. What are you hearing about that?
We know that there is a draft memo going around from the White House's budget office, from their legal counsel, that states that furloughed government workers, as well as those who are working right now without pay, are not entitled to back pay should the shutdown end or when it does. The general counsel at the Office of Management and Budget says that their reading of a 2019 law called the Government Employee Fair Treatment Act does not guarantee back pay, and essentially that Congress needs to include language in their funding bill to reopen the government that explicitly states that those furloughed employees get that back pay. Historically, Congress does this, but it is a technicality that the White House is discussing that is scaring some federal workers. Administration officials, though, stress that this is just a discussion. There is no final determination on all of this, but you're already getting some reaction from both sides of the aisle in Congress. Washington Senator Patty Murray, a Democrat, said that federal workers are, quote, entitled to their back pay, and that this is an attempt to, quote, scare and intimidate workers. Senate Majority Leader John Thune said he did not know what statute the budget office was referring to there, and said that, quote, the question of whether people get paid or not is a non-issue. So we will see if there is a final determination made by the White House on this. But again, they stress that this is just an ongoing discussion at the moment.
All right, we'll wait and see how that plays out. Aaron Navarro at the White House for us today. Thank you. And now to Capitol Hill, where 1 week after the federal government shut down, the Senate is back in session. Democrats and Republicans, they continue to blame the other after 5 attempts at passing a short-term funding bill have failed in the last week. Now, House Speaker Mike Johnson, here is what he had to say on reports that some federal workers on furlough during the shutdown may not receive back pay.
But there are some legal analysts who are saying that that may not be appropriate or necessary in terms of the law requiring that back pay be provided. So I'm sure that'll be there will be a lot of discussion about that. But there are legal analysts who think that that is not something that government should do. That, if that is true, that should turn up the urgency and the necessity of the Democrats doing the right thing here. Even more pain, more than I just listed, for more people. So we got to.
Okay, CBS News congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns. She's on Capitol Hill once again for us today. Caitlin, thank you for joining us. Tell us more about what Leader Johnson had to say this morning as this impasse continues.
Impasse is exactly the right word to use, Mugo. Both sides still very much dug in their positions. But this memo that Aaron just talked about and you heard Speaker Johnson address there is throwing a new wrinkle into all of this. But we should note that Congress back in 2019, after the last government shutdown, the longest in history that lasted 34 days, Congress then passed a law making sure that federal workers who were furloughed would receive back pay. So that law is on the books. So there is this discussion being circulated by the White House. But meanwhile, there is a law in the books that said federal workers have to be back paid. We heard Republican Senate Leader John Thune reference that, talking to reporters earlier today. But this is all an effort for Republicans to turn up the urgency here because there really hasn't been much progress, Mugo. Both sides still very much dug in their positions, and they're still not talking to each other. So we'll see a series of press conferences later today. We may even see another vote on the same proposal. But Republicans' argument remains the same. We can't entertain any discussions about health care until the government reopens. Democrats saying that they want real policy assurances before they vote for anything to reopen the government. So the conversation we're having today is similar to the one we were having just a week ago.
Yeah, pretty much is, Caitlin. So President Trump said yesterday that talks were ongoing between the White House and Democrats, but he later walked that back on Truth Social, saying, "I am happy to work with the Democrats on their failed health care policies or anything else, but first they must allow our government to reopen." So, Caitlin, what's been the reaction to the president's position?
Well, the president's position is the position that Republicans have had this entire time. We can talk about renewing those ACA subsidies. We can talk about healthcare policy, but first you have to vote to reopen the government. For Republicans, that's non-negotiable. But for Democrats, they want more than just a promise of a conversation. They are saying that they want actual policy attached to this government funding bill that extends those ACA subsidies, those Obamacare subsidies set to expire at the end of the year. So what the president was saying is a reiteration, for lack of a better word, of the Republicans' argument. Before anything can happen, you have to vote to reopen the government. Now, what we're watching today is whether that does, coming from the president, whether that does give any Democrats who were kind of on the fence about strategy, give them any reason to say, hey, maybe I will vote to reopen the government. We just haven't seen that crack in the Democratic coalition just yet. But the longer this goes on, we'll wait and see. The other thing I should note, Mugo, is next week paychecks will run out for those federal furloughed workers. And then we're also likely to see health care premiums continue to rise, more people getting notices and the like. And so that's part of the Democrats' argument here. The more outside pressure builds, they believe that will help their argument. But you have to ask, how far are you willing to go in this shutdown, inducing some kind of pain for federal workers? How long can that go? And that's something that Democrats are really wrestling with at this moment.
Yeah, very important question there. Caitlin Huey-Burns on Capitol Hill. Thank you so much.